The scariest thing is to live a life that was handed to you. Joseph Campbell. Before we begin, here's a small ritual. Write in the comments one word that accurately describes your current state. Sign it, and let's get started. You wake up, and everything seems normal. But inside, something feels off. It's not loud, it's not screaming. It's just there. That silent heaviness in your chest, that quiet ache that doesn't go away. You're functioning. You're doing everything right. But it's like your soul is watching it all from a distance, detached, empty. You try to explain it to someone, but how do you explain a feeling that doesn't have a name? So you tell yourself you're tired, you need a break. Maybe it's just stress, but deep down, you know it's something deeper. It's not that you're weak. It's not that you're broken. It's that you're lost. Not in the world, in yourself. There's this strange kind of fear, not the fear of failure, not the fear of judgment. It's the fear of realizing this life doesn't feel like yours. The job, the family, the goals, the routine, all of it. Like someone handed you a script and you've been performing it your whole life without ever questioning who wrote it. And this fear, it creeps in quietly. It doesn't shout. It whispers in moments of silence, in the car, in the shower, late at night when everything else goes quiet. That voice, is this really me? And it scares you, because if this isn't your life, then where is yours? You're not a coward, but the life you're living has no space for you to be real. You feel guilt for wanting more, shame for not being grateful. You punish yourself for having dreams you can't explain. But maybe the problem isn't you. Maybe the problem is the life that was never yours to begin with. What if the fear you feel is actually your soul waking up? What if everything that feels wrong is trying to lead you back to yourself? What if your anxiety isn't an illness, but a compass? They told you to calm down, to be more positive, to be thankful. But no one told you the truth, that when you betray your inner truth, fear is the body's way of saying, stop, this isn't you. And yet, we normalize it, we adapt, we survive, we tell ourselves, everyone feels this way. And in that moment, we betray ourselves one more time, quietly, invisibly, deeply. But here's the thing, the fear doesn't go away because it's not your enemy, it's your signal, a sign that somewhere deep inside, you're still alive, still fighting, still hoping there's more. And the most painful part of it all, you never got to choose who you became. You just adapted to survive, to fit in, to be loved, to not be alone. But now, something inside of you is tired of pretending, tired of being okay, tired of being good. It wants to be real. And this is the moment where change begins. Not when you feel strong, but when you finally admit that this life is not yours. Fear isn't the problem. The real problem is that no one taught you how to listen to it. Not the panic, not the surface-level anxiety, but that quiet, haunting fear that lives under your skin. The one that whispers every time you make a decision. What if this isn't who I am? That fear appears not because you're weak. It appears because something inside of you knows. You're living a life that doesn't belong to you. Not fully, not honestly. You wake up every day inside a version of yourself that was built by expectations. Your parents told you what a good person looks like. School told you what success means. Culture gave you the script for how to behave, how to dress, how to speak, and you followed. Because as a child, love is survival. So you became what was expected. You abandoned your truth, not because you were a coward, but because you were loyal. Loyal to the love you thought you had to earn. And now, as an adult, that loyalty becomes a prison. The more you try to please, the emptier you feel. The more you try to do things right, the less you recognize your own reflection. You're not running from life. You're running from the constant performance, from the exhausting effort to be acceptable, likable, successful, according to someone else's definition. The fear you feel every day, it's not about the world. It's your system warning you that you've been disconnected from your essence for too long. That fear is a symptom of self-betrayal. Every time you said yes when you meant no. Every time you stayed silent to keep the peace. Every time you smiled while your insides screamed. You're not afraid of life. You're afraid of what will happen if you finally choose yourself. Because choosing yourself means letting go of who you were taught to be. And that's terrifying. Because you built your identity around survival, around acceptance, around being good. But good for who? And at what cost? You don't need to fight your fear. You need to decode it. Your fear is not an enemy. It's an alarm. It's your body trying to shake you awake. Trying to say, this isn't your path. This isn't your voice. This isn't your life. And if you listen closely, you'll hear it's not just fear you're feeling. It's grief. Grief for the parts of you you had to bury. Grief for the dreams you silenced to be accepted. Grief for the truth that's been waiting inside you for years. If these words are hitting something real inside you, subscribe to the channel so more people who feel the same can finally hear what no one dares to say. And join the Telegram too, where we go deeper without filters or algorithms. And if you know you've been living someone else's life, write this in the comments. I'm done running from pain. Let's see how many of us are ready for the truth. Because this fear you carry, it's not weakness, it's the doorway. And the fact that you're feeling it now means one thing. You're closer than ever to coming back to yourself. You've spent your whole life trying to be strong. But let's be honest, whose definition of strength are you following? They told you strength is about endurance, about pushing through, about staying silent when it hurts, smiling when it burns, and performing when you're breaking inside. They told you to be good, to be polite, to be responsible. And you did. You wore the mask. You carried the weight. And somewhere along the way, you started confusing control with power. But now, the cracks are showing. And no one warned you that holding it all together could one day be the very thing that breaks you. This idea of doing it right is the most dangerous trap. Right by whose standards? Your parents, your partners, societies? The truth is, you've been living under borrowed definitions for so long that your own voice sounds foreign. Success became a checklist. Happiness became a performance. And freedom, it turned into a concept you only allow yourself to dream about when no one's watching. You tell yourself you're doing what's necessary, but at what cost? You sacrifice your truth in the name of stability and then wonder why you can't breathe. Every time you force yourself to follow the script, a part of you dies. Slowly, quietly, respectably. You become the version of yourself that's easy to explain to others, but impossible to feel from within. You're praised for your strength, for your responsibility, for how well you manage everything. But inside, you know you're managing an illusion. You're not living, you're maintaining, managing chaos behind closed doors just to keep the surface looking clean. And here's the hardest part to admit. You've been rewarded for betraying yourself. People like you more when you're quiet, when you're nice, when you smile and agree and don't make things complicated. So you learned to shrink yourself, to filter your truth, to keep the peace even when it costs you everything. And it worked. You got approval, you got love, but not for who you are, for who you pretend to be. You're not weak for feeling lost. You're not broken for doubting everything. You're just finally waking up from the trance of obedience. That constant need to do it right has kept you trapped in a life that looks good but feels empty. And maybe for the first time, you're seeing it. That the fear you carry isn't about stepping into something new. It's about stepping away from everything false. And that's the real shift. Not becoming stronger, but becoming real. Letting the mask slip. Letting your voice tremble. Letting your truth, the one you buried under layers of performance, finally rise to the surface. The real you doesn't need to be fixed. It just needs to be heard. And that can't happen while you're busy being right. There's more than one way to be strong. And maybe the bravest thing you'll ever do is stop pretending everything is fine and finally admit, this isn't me. You think you're making choices. You think you're deciding what's best for you. But most of your life isn't chosen. It's repeated. It's the same patterns, the same reactions, the same self-sabotage dressed up as logic. And the reason it feels impossible to break free isn't because you're not trying hard enough. It's because something deeper, something unconscious, is pulling the strings while you convince yourself you're in control. You're not lazy. You're not lost. You're operating from scripts written decades ago by pain, fear, and unmet needs. Inside you lives a map, not the one you drew, one drawn for you by childhood wounds, by emotional survival, by what you had to become to feel safe. And unless you stop and look at that map, you will keep ending up in the same place, disconnected, anxious, numb. That voice in your head that tells you you're not enough, that's not your voice. That's the voice of someone who once convinced you that love is conditional, that your worth must be earned. And now, even when you try to change, that voice echoes in every decision. Don't go too far. Don't be too loud. Don't be too real. The unconscious isn't evil. It's protective, but it's outdated. It's running your life based on who you were, not who you are. And the more you try to change your external world without touching the root, the more exhausted you become. Because healing isn't about fixing your behavior. It's about understanding who that behavior was created to protect. Your patterns don't make you weak. They make you human. But staying trapped in them, when you now have awareness, that's the real danger. The shadow, as Jung called it, is everything you've exiled, every emotion you weren't allowed to feel, every part of you that was called too much, too sensitive, too intense. So you buried it. You smiled instead of shouting. You agreed instead of resisting. And now that shadow lives inside you, not to haunt you, but to be reclaimed. Until you look at it with honesty, it will sabotage your progress. Not because it wants you to fail, but because it wants to be seen. This is why you can read all the books, go to therapy, meditate every morning, and still feel stuck. Because if your healing doesn't touch the unconscious, it stays on the surface. Most people are trying to change their lives by controlling symptoms, but the root is emotional, somatic, deep, and often what you need isn't more information. You need the courage to feel what you've been running from your whole life. You keep asking why it's so hard to change, but real change isn't about effort. It's about integration, making space for the forgotten parts, talking to the fear instead of fighting it, holding the inner child instead of judging them, and slowly, layer by layer, dismantling the illusion that strength means never feeling lost. Your unconscious has been trying to protect you from pain, but in doing so, it's kept you from yourself. And now it's time to reclaim the parts you were told to hide. Not to become someone new, but to finally come home. There's a reason you feel that low-level anxiety every day. A reason the smallest things drain you. A reason you wake up already tired, even after a full night's sleep. You're not broken. You're not weak. You're simply out of alignment. Living a life that doesn't reflect your truth costs energy, and the body keeps the score. You might look functional from the outside, but inside, your system is in survival mode. Not because you're in danger, but because your soul is suffocating under all the layers of should. One of the clearest signs that you're not living your life is emotional numbness. You don't feel joy fully. You don't feel grief fully. You stay in the middle, in a flat zone, disconnected from both ends. Because feeling fully would mean facing truths you've spent years avoiding. It would mean admitting that what you've built, the job, the marriage, the identity, isn't really yours. And that's terrifying. So instead, you keep moving, keep achieving, keep performing. But every accomplishment feels hollow. Because when the inner compass is off, no amount of success brings peace. Another sign, you constantly ask for advice, but ignore your own gut. You're surrounded by opinions, feedback, content, and guidance. Yet the more input you collect, the more lost you feel. Deep down, you already know. But trusting yourself feels dangerous, because your truth might contradict everything you've been taught. It might upset people. It might dismantle your image. So instead of following it, you silence it and call it being realistic. You also notice that your emotions don't match your reality. You cry at strange times. You get angry over small things. You feel panic when nothing's wrong. That's your inner world trying to speak through your body, not to harm you, but to reveal what words can't. The emotional dissonance is real, and until you face the gap between how you live and who you are, your system will keep signaling, this isn't safe. Not because the world is unsafe, but because the life you're living denies your core self. Living someone else's life also shows up in your relationships. You attract people who reflect your wounds, not your truth. You keep choosing dynamics where you're not fully seen. You keep proving your worth instead of resting in it. Because when you're disconnected from yourself, you settle, not because you want to, but because deep down, you don't believe there's space for your real self to be loved. And maybe the most painful sign of all is that quiet voice you hear at night. When everything stops, when you're alone, it whispers truths you try to drown during the day. It tells you you're tired of pretending, that you miss yourself, that you don't even know what happy means anymore. Not really. And that voice doesn't go away, because it's not here to torment you. It's here to wake you up. There's no shame in living a borrowed life. Most people do. But if you're here, still listening, still feeling, still questioning, it means something inside you hasn't given up. You still believe there's more. Not more success, more truth, more peace, more realness. And that begins when you stop asking, what should I do? And start asking, who am I really? Without the noise. Breaking free doesn't start with a grand decision. It starts with honesty. Brutal, uncomfortable honesty. You sit down and ask yourself, who taught me what success looks like? Who defined what I should want? Who benefits from me staying small, obedient, predictable? And when the answers come, you don't argue, you listen, because those answers are the doorway out of the life that isn't yours. Every belief you hold about what's right, what's responsible, what's acceptable, question it, especially if it hurts, especially if it's been running your life for years without ever asking what you truly want. Start noticing your patterns. When you say yes just to avoid conflict, when you smile while swallowing rage, when you apologize for simply existing differently. Every one of these moments is a breadcrumb, pointing to where you abandoned yourself. Track them, not to judge, but to reclaim. Ask yourself over and over again, is this mine? If the answer is no, let it fall. Beliefs, roles, identities. If they don't feed your truth, they're chains. Then go to the body. Your mind might lie to keep you safe, but your body doesn't. The tension in your chest when you agree to something you hate. The lump in your throat when you stay silent. The heaviness in your gut when you ignore what you feel. All of that is data, not noise. Listen to it. Let your nervous system speak. That's where your truth lives. And don't do it alone. Find spaces, even if just one person, where you don't need to perform, where your messy, raw, real self is not only allowed, but welcomed. Healing happens in connection, not with those who want you to stay the same, but with those who see you, even when you're still learning to see yourself. You've heard enough theory, enough reflection. Now it's time to act, because nothing changes until you move, until you stop just thinking about your pain and start responding to it differently. You don't need more information. You need new patterns. Not tomorrow, not after the next crisis. Today, right now. And no, you don't need to change your whole life overnight. You need to begin walking in your direction. That alone changes everything. Here are 3 powerful, simple, and brutally effective tools to help you stop living someone else's life and finally start living your own. These aren't magic tricks. They won't make the fear vanish, but they will help you step into your truth even while it shakes. 1. The no list practice. Every evening, take 5 minutes. Sit down with a pen and write this title on the page. What I said yes to today that I didn't want. Then go back through your day. Every fake smile, every forced yes, every moment you ignored yourself, write them down. Don't filter, don't justify, just name them. Then, next to each one, write, what would I have done if I were free? This list is not about shame, it's about clarity. It shows you, in real time, where you are abandoning yourself and where you can start choosing differently. Awareness first, courage second. You can't stop betraying yourself until you see how often you do it. 2. The body truth scan. Once a day, find 5 minutes of silence. Close your eyes. Ask yourself one question. What in my life feels heavy and what feels alive? Then scan your body. Don't think, feel. If your chest tightens when you think about your job, pay attention. If your stomach drops when you see a certain person's name pop up, that's data. Your body knows before your mind accepts. Keep a journal where you write down these responses every day. You'll start to see a map, not of where you should go, but of what's real. And reality is where your life begins to heal. 3. The fuck the role ritual. Once a week, do one thing that breaks the character you've been playing. Speak up in a space where you usually stay silent. Say no to something everyone expects you to agree with. Wear something that feels like you, not what's expected. Post something real instead of polished. Break the pattern, even in a small way. Why? Because fear shrinks every time you prove to your nervous system that you're still safe, even when you're real. This tool isn't about rebellion. It's about identity. Every time you choose truth over performance, you reclaim yourself. You won't stop feeling fear overnight, but you'll start fearing the right things, not what others think, not losing approval, but losing yourself. And once that shift happens, no system, no story, no conditioning can keep you stuck for long. You become dangerous, not to others, to the lies that have run your life. If you've come this far, you already know this fear isn't weakness. It's your soul waking up. And now, it's your move. If this hits something inside you, subscribe to the channel so more people like you can hear what no one else dares to say. And make sure to join the Telegram, where we go deeper, raw, and more real than any algorithm will allow. And if you're ready to stop pretending, stop performing, and finally start living, write this in the comments. I accept my shadow. Say it like a promise to yourself, a declaration, a beginning, because that's what this is. The beginning of your life, not the life they gave you, the one that's yours. And this is only the start.